Charana Isha, the leaders of the Charanas. Yea, as also others. Yaksha, the leaders of the Yakshas. Raksha, demons. Uraga, snakes. Naganatha, the leaders of Nagaloka, below the earth. Yea, others. Va, also. Rishnam, of the sages. Rishbaha, the chief. Pitranam, of the forefathers. Daitya Indra, leaders of the atheists. Siddha Ishvara, leaders of the Siddhaloka planets. Spacemen. Dhanava Indraha, leaders of the non-Aryans. Anye, besides them. Cha, also. Ye, those. Preta, dead bodies. Pishacha, evil spirits. Bhuta, jinn. Kushmanda, a special type of evil spirit. Yadaha, aquatics. Mriga, animals. Pakshi Adisha, giant eagles. Yat, anything. Kimcha, and everything. Loke, in the world. Bhagavat, possessed of bhaga, or extraordinary power. Mahasvat, of a special degree. Oja Sahasvat, specific mental and sensual dexterity. Balavat, possessed of strength. Shamavat, possessed of forgiveness. Shri, beauty. Hri, ashamed of impious acts. Vibhuti, riches. Atmavat, possessed of intelligence. Adbhuta, wonderful. Arnam, race. Tattvam, specific truth. Param, transcendental. Rupavat, as if the form of. Ashvarupam, not the form of the Lord. Okay, so we've got the translation and the purport. By His divine grace, I see Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Okay, translation. I myself Brahma, Lord Shiva, Lord Vishnu, great generators of living beings like Daksha, Prajapati, yourselves, Narada, and the Kumaras, heavenly demigods like Indra and Chandra, the leaders of Bhurloka planets, the leaders of the earthly planets, the leaders of the lower planets, the leaders of Gandharva planets, the leaders of Vidyadhara planets, the leaders of Charanaloka planets, the leaders of Yakshas, Rakshas, and Urgas, the great sages, the great demons, the great atheists, and the great spacemen, as well as the dead bodies, evil spirits, Satans, jinn, Kushmandas, great aquatics, great beasts, and great birds, etc. In other words, anything and everything which is exceptionally possessed of power, opulence, mental and perpetual dexterity, strength, forgiveness, beauty, modesty, opulence, and breeding, whether in form or formless, may appear to be the specific truth and the form of the Lord, but actually they are not so. They are only a fragment of the transcendental potency of the Lord. So we'll move on to the purport. By His divine grace, I see Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada ki jai. So those in the list given above, beginning from the name Brahmaji, and the first living creature within the universe, down to Lord Shiva, Lord Vishnu, Narad, and other powerful demigods, men, supermen, okay, sages, rishis, and other lower creatures of extraordinary strength and opulence, including the dead bodies, satans, evil spirits, jinn, aquatics, birds, and beasts, may appear to be the Supreme Lord, but factually none of them is the Supreme Lord. Every one of them possess only a fragment of the great potencies of the spiritual potencies of the Supreme Lord. So what this one is actually referring to is basically every living entity, and up to a certain stage they hold certain potencies and certain powers. I mean, personally, I would know most of them what they mean, and I had some issues with. I mean, I've never come across a word called jinn. I didn't know what that was, but I understand that jinn means something to do with. It's like a ghostly body. I think it's a ghost. But even from the suggestion here, from this purport, that even ghosts have certain powers. And they may appear to have certain potencies of the Supreme Lord. And what it's saying here is from all the way from Brahma to even the birds and beasts, they don't have, they are not the Supreme Lord. They might appear to have certain powers that is worshipable. I mean, we've got people worshipping Narad, not Narad, but like Lord Shiva. We've got, yes, people do look up to Narad, of course, for spiritual enlightenment. Then there is a certain class of people who worship evil spirits and obviously jinn, and they do this dark, I guess, magic or something like that. But then we have got people like the Aborigines who worship the land and the skies and the mountains and the seas. And then we have certain classes of people who worship birds and beasts. I mean, to them that's God, or how they know God. But in actual fact, they might possess certain qualities of the Lord, but is not the Supreme Lord. So moving on from there, the less intelligent man is surprised to see the wonderful actions of material phenomena, as the Aborigines are fearful of great thunderbolt, a great gigantic banyan tree, or a great lofty mountain in the jungle. For such undeveloped human beings, merely the side display of the Lord's potency is captivating. A still more advanced person is captivated by the powers of the demigods and goddesses. Therefore, those who are simply astonished by the powers of anything in the creation of the Lord, without any factual information of the Lord himself, are known as Shaktas, or worshippers of the great powers. So this one actually refers to those who do not have access to the Vedic knowledge as we know it, or perhaps are not as developed as those who are worshipping Lord Krishna. But to them, anything with a greater power appears to be very much godly, and so they take to worshipping the gods, and they take to very much worshipping whatever appears to have the transcendental power. So, continuing from there, the modern scientist is also captivated by the wonderful actions and reactions of natural phenomena, and therefore is also a Shakta. These lower grade persons gradually rise to become Sauryas, worshippers of the sun god, or Ganpatiyas, worshippers of mass of people as Janata Janardana or Daridra Narayana, etc., in the form of Ganapati, and then rise to the platform of worshipping Lord Shiva in search of ever-existing soul, and then to the stage of worshipping Lord Vishnu, the super soul, etc., without any information of Govinda, Lord Krishna, who is the original Lord Vishnu. So this is gradual progress. It's saying that we start off with a demigod, and then we progress through to Lord Shiva, and then Lord Narayan, and then obviously the super soul. And still they do not have any information on that Lord Krishna is the Supreme Personality. However, they are in the gradual process. In other words, some are worshippers of race, nationality, birds, beasts, evil spirits and Satans, etc. The general worship of Shanidev, the lord of distressful condition, and Sitala Devi, the goddess of smallpox, is also common to the mass of people. And there are many foolish men who worship the mass of people or the poor class of men. So the different persons, societies and communities, etc., worship some of the potent manifestations of the Lord, wrongly accepting the powerful object as God. But in this verse, it is advised by Brahmaji that none of them is the Supreme Lord. They are only borrowed plumes from the original Almighty, Lord Krishna. When the Lord advises in the Bhagavad Gita to worship Him alone, it is to be understood that worshipping Lord Krishna includes worshipping all that is mentioned, because He, Lord Krishna, includes everyone. When the Lord is described as formless in the Vedic literatures, it is to be understood that all these forms mentioned above, within the experience of universal knowledge, are different exhibitions of the Lord's transcendental potencies only, and none of them factually represents the transcendental form of the Lord. But when the Lord actually descends on the earth or anywhere within the universe, the less intelligent class of men also mistake Him to be one of them, and thus they imagine the transcendence to be formless or impersonal. Factually, the Lord is not formless, nor does He belong to any of the multiform experience within the universal forms. One should try to know the truth about the Lord by following the instructions of Brahmaji. So, Om Jnanatimirandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurun Militam Yena Tasmai Shri Guruve Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manovistam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamayam Dadati Sva Padantikam Vandeham Shri Gurum Shri Yutapadakabalam Shri Gurum Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sagana Raghunathanvitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Parijana Saitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sagana Lalita Shri Vishakhan Vitamscha. He Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dinabandhu Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namastute Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavanishwari Vrishabhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Vanchakalpa Trubhyascha Kripa Sindhu Va Evacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha. Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Sri Vasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Okay, so there's quite a lot of information given here in this particular text, but the bottom line is the mention that there's many classes of people who worship different gods in different moods, in different. It is personally because they have not been exposed to our Vedic system, basically, and they don't know that Lord Krishna is Supreme Personality of Godhead. So, I would like to refer, in this regard, Lord Krishna in the Bhagavad Gita has mentioned in many places. If we go into the Bhagavad Gita, basically the whole Bhagavad Gita is Lord Krishna telling us that He is God. And one of the famous verses is in the last chapter. I'll go there. Hopefully I can get there faster. This is an iPad. It's in the last chapter 18. And it's text number 66. So let's go there fast. Krishna says, Sarva dharmam parityajya mam ekam sharanam vraja aham tvam sarva papebhyo Mokshayisham ma suchaha. In other words, abandon all varieties of religion and just surrender unto me. I shall deliver you from all sinful reactions. Do not fear. In other words, he is pretty much okay if you abandon your previous religions or whatever religions you are following, and he will protect you. I mean, there is he has described various kinds in this Srimad Bhagavatam. There's been various religions described. Knowledge of the Supreme Brahman and knowledge of the Supreme Soul, different types of orders and status of social life. I mean, people are worshipping evil spirits and all kinds of things. So, but here it's quite clear. If you and this Bhagavad Gita is obviously the word of Lord Krishna. So we kind of like look towards the Bhagavad Gita as authority. So if Lord Krishna says, "I'm God," He is God. And if he says, abandon all the other religions, you'll be fine, it's going to be fine. So, and then there are some others, very nice references to him being God. And he explains this to Arjun. In the one that I prefer the most is the one in chapter 8. And we go on to text 8, Bhagavad Gita text 8. Where he is telling Arjun about himself as God. And he says, he who meditates on me, this is Bhagavad Gita chapter 8, text 8. He who meditates on me as the Supreme Personality of Godhead, his mind constantly engaged in remembering me, undeviated from the path, he, O Partha, is sure to reach me. In other words, that's the only way that you can actually reach Lord Krishna is just by simply meditating on him and not any other demigods or any other gods in that effect. And there's a very nice example given in that same text, which I personally like very much. It is about the butterfly, the caterpillar. The caterpillar is always meditating on becoming a butterfly one day. And while he is meditating on becoming a butterfly, he obviously one day he does. And that's how we constantly think of Krishna. We think that one day we will reach him. So at the end of the lives, we shall have the same bodily constitution as Lord Krishna. Then chapter text 8, text 9 also says, one should meditate upon the Supreme Person as the one who knows everything. As he who is the oldest, who is the controller, who is smaller than the smallest, who is the maintainer of everything, who is beyond all material conception, who is inconceivable, and who is always a person. He is luminous like the sun, and he is transcendental beyond material nature. And then finally, this is a good one, and it actually is a good one. It kind of means a lot to and applies to a lot of us. And this one is saying, the one who at the time of death fixes his life air between the eyebrows and by the strength of yoga with an undeviating mind engages himself in remembering the Supreme Lord. So the essence of it is in the time of death. It is very difficult, obviously. I mean, if we break a leg, we'll be thinking of the pain. We wouldn't be thinking of Krishna, or you could say, Krishna, please remove the pain. But at the time of death, if somehow or other we are able to remember Lord Krishna, we will certainly attain the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So, in this particular text also, now that we've sort of covered, like Lord Krishna says, who I am, and what you really should be doing in order to reach me, is basically just fix your mind on him. Abandon all religions. You don't really need to, and it's just like you're watering the roots of a plant, and the entire plants get, the water. So if Lord Krishna is the Supreme Personality of Godhead, if you worship him, you are basically covering all avenues and worshipping everything, including the 33 million demigods. Finally, in this chapter, there's a very good point that's been raised, is that if we want to reach Lord Krishna, we have to follow the instructions of Lord Brahma. And in the last class, I had touched a little bit on Lord Brahma being the father of all fathers. I mean, he has the original Veda that's been, our Shastras being taught to him directly by Krishna as he was being born from the, Mahavishnu's navel. And he was quite bewildered. Who am I? What is all this? And where is everything? So he was directly taught by Lord Krishna. As he played his flute and everything, all the knowledge went into his heart. So he knows basically everything. He can teach us everything. So right now we are in Kali Yuga, obviously, and we are unable to speak directly to Lord Brahma. However, he has left many scriptures which has been passed on by Narad Muni, because Lord Brahma passed in this information to Narad Muni, who passed on this information to his disciple, Srila Vyasadeva. And then from there, the disciplic succession has, continued all the way to Srila Prabhupada. So my point being that if you are looking for guidance of Lord Brahma, then we can turn to Srila Prabhupada's books. Now, in our Srimad Bhagavatam also, there are many stories also that would give us these instructions and basically motivation and inspiration to follow, so that we can actually know Krishna. Knowing Krishna is not easy. Knowing Krishna is not easy in the sense that we need to be able to understand the concept of Krishna from a pure devotee. In other words, pure devotees are the only ones who can actually give us the Bhakti Lata Bij. In other words, they can plant the seed of devotion in our hearts. One who knows Krishna can actually give us Krishna, and one who doesn't know Krishna cannot. So, why is it so important that we actually listen to pure devotees? Why can't we just read a book and know about Krishna? Why can't we just know about the Lord and the Lord Brahma and whatever his pastimes are just by reading a book? And the reason is that the devotees always have Lord Krishna within their hearts. In other words, they know Krishna from the heart. And when Krishna is in their hearts, their activities are also intertwined. For example, Narad Muni, he has Lord Krishna in his heart all the time. And all of Narad Muni's pastimes are all intertwined with Lord Krishna. So when we are, just like there's wet paint, it gets onto your hands. I mean, if you touch paint, it'll get onto your hands and you'll get paint in your hands. So in the similar way, if you associate with somebody, or you talk to somebody, or you speak to somebody who has been associating directly with the Lord, that love for Krishna, that knowledge will come straight onto you. As opposed to, say, if you're speaking to somebody who's like a scientist, or somebody who's a speculator, or somebody who's into theory, they don't really know Krishna as Krishna is. And that love cannot be passed on. So it was always nice to be associated with somebody who is with Lord Krishna. Now, so we can't really associate it directly with Narad Muni, obviously, but we can always associate with them through their teachings, which is in our Srimad Bhagavatam. But in that regard, we know that the representative of these Srimad Bhagavatam books are passed on to us by our spiritual masters. So the best way to go is obviously we need to surrender to our spiritual masters, because they will know how to pass on the Bhakti Lata Bij. Now the Bhakti Lata Bij is the seed of Bhakti, and it is only planted by somebody who is a pure or a bona fide representative of Lord Krishna, and that is our spiritual master. And when we chant, we basically offer waters or offer nurturing to that little seed, a tiny little seed that's been planted, and it grows. And it grows into a nice large plant of bhakti. So we need to be able to hear from somebody like that. Now, the Srimad Bhagavatam obviously has been written by Srila Vyasadeva, who is free from sins. So he would be the one that would be the best person to go to, obviously. And then there is another point in knowing about the Lord is the method of, well, last time we touched a little bit on humility, but there's another very important, very, very crucial ingredient that we need to have in order to be able to know Krishna. Other than the humility, the surrender, the love, there is one very, it's like a matter of, it's basically like breathing. We need to have this particular ingredient in us. And if anyone's listening, or if you're listening, you can guess, maybe you can tell me what that ingredient is that you need to be able to understand the secret of Krishna consciousness. What is it that we need to have that's so important? Other than our spiritual master, other than our chanting, other than our books, other than humility, other than surrender, there is one very, very important ingredient. And that ingredient is mentioned in the first, I understand it, if my memory serves correct, is the first text in chapter 7 of the Bhagavad Gita, which Krishna tells Arjuna. He says, because you are having this particular quality, I'm now going to reveal the most confidential knowledge, the most secret knowledge. And that particular quality is envy. It is so important to have this, that you do not have envy, basically. You don't have this quality. You are non-envious. The reason is you will be able to listen about Krishna with an open heart. You'll be able to listen to Krishna with a very open mind. You'll be ready to actually love Krishna. So even though these books are very, very, very easily available, and the word of Lord Krishna is in the Bhagavad Gita and the Srimad Bhagavatam books that we are distributing, it's so easily available, but it is of no use if we do not have the love for Krishna and we possess a non-envious nature. So it is basically an open secret. Although it is a secret, it is really not a secret. But it's not really a secret, but it is a secret, I'd say. If you harbor envy, then you will not be able to get the actual knowledge of Krishna. So that part is actually quite important. And then we need to also appreciate. This is another thing. This is all about following the regulations, the teachings that Lord Brahma has left, and how we can actually follow them in order to know Krishna and worship Krishna. So one of them is to be non-envious. One of them is to have the association of a spiritual master, as I mentioned. One of them is to hear from a pure devotee. The reason I've given why, because their activities are intertwined with Lord Krishna. They have personal association, they have personal experience with Lord Krishna. So these are all the things that are leading towards you learning about the Supreme Personality of Godhead, obviously. And one of them, where was I? Let's see, where was I? So we should not, oh, right. The other one is obviously if somebody is somebody of that stature, somebody of that level, or somebody of that spiritual status is speaking about Krishna, or is preaching about Krishna, or somebody of that high, for example, our acharyas, our spiritual masters, someone who's learned, is speaking and preaching to us and telling us, giving us the knowledge of Krishna, we should appreciate it. That they are more advanced and they know how to guide us. So we really need to, those who are initiated and those who are aspiring would know about this quite well, how they can appreciate their spiritual masters. However, that kind of goes across the board. Like there was one incident where Tamal Krishna Maharaj was in Texas, and it was his Vyasa Puja happening, and he insisted that all his god brothers were on the same level as him, and he made sure each one of them were worshipped to that degree, and he refused to accept a certain superiority over his spiritual brothers, god brothers. Appreciation of our acharyas is really important. One guru is just as important as the other one. They are all representatives of Srila Prabhupada. And, we recite Vanchakalpa every morning. Vanchakalpa Trubhyascha Kripa Sindhuva Evacha Patitanam Pavnebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha. We have this culture of appreciating every single devotee, because they not only have a Bhakti Lata Bij, they have, as soon as you become a devotee, you develop some certain powers, which is a really interesting bit too. Like, you don't really become like Superman, or you don't have like a Superman powers, but you certainly do have spiritual potencies, certain potencies. Every devotee does. It depends on how advanced they are, or how much sadhana they have practiced, how far along they have come in removing the anarthas from their personality and their hearts. An envious person, we are in different levels of bhakti, so there is no judgment from one devotee to the next, obviously. But however, the more advanced or the more practice you do for spiritual, your potencies increase. And that's why certain people are able to attract devotees, or attract people for preaching like magnets, because of the sadhana they have practiced. Obviously, that also comes from empowerment. Like the other day when Prabhu was saying, your classes are good and your kirtans are good. I was thinking, they are actually not mine. Not that I think they are good at all, but if they happen to be, if my kirtan is good, or if my class is good, not that I think that they are, I'm a struggling devotee just like everyone else, but suppose it is, it doesn't belong to me. Actually, these are certain blessings that we receive from our spiritual masters, but there are certain empowerments that Lord Chaitanya gives to his devotees, so that they are able to achieve certain services that they're meant to do. For example, we have most excellent book distributors in Sydney Yatra, and they are empowerments by Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, and we should appreciate it as such. And there are certain people who are just super excellent in kirtans, or super excellent in delivering message of Krishna. It doesn't really belong to them. I've never ever, by Srimati Radharani's grace, never ever thought that any of my abilities were mine, simply because I was given a realization dream, where she came, and in my dream, without going too much in the detail, she revealed certain of her qualities, and she indicated that these qualities that I receive, or any of the devotees receive, it comes from her. They're not really mine. They're hers, in service of Lord Krishna. So when we see, the whole point I'm coming to is when there's an advanced devotee or there's any devotee who happens to be preaching or serving Lord Krishna in a certain way, we need to appreciate them and appreciate the fact that that empowerment comes from a higher source. It doesn't belong to them. And neither should that particular devotee become puffed up and think I'm too good at this or I'm too good at that. That actually is a sign. The more we think, basically dasa dasa anudasa, that shloka that we say a lot. We are the servant of the servant of the servant. We take a humble attitude, a humble approach, but we also realize that these qualities are not our own. I did want to tell that Prabhu that you might have said my kirtan is nice, but actually they're not mine. I heard Srimati Radharani sing. And her singing is amazing. The tune, the melody. Basically, she told me that she's the melody in Lord Krishna's flute. So if you happen to hear Lord Krishna, if you're lucky enough to hear his flute, the melody that's in her flute, in his flute, is the personification of Srimati Radharani. And when that melody was playing, Sri Radharani was humming. Everything was melting, including myself. I could see the earth, the sky, the mountains, everything like melting like honey. And they were all like going up and down in the intonation of our melodies. And suddenly I felt really warm sensation and I felt myself melting. So because of that nice dream, it is a dream, I'm able to appreciate that any melodies that we hear, that spiritual melodies and transcendental sounds that we hear, kirtans, anyone singing very nicely, I certainly feel Srimati Radharani there as a melody, O Lord Krishna. Always I have. So it always helps to appreciate someone who is preaching on Lord Krishna and his names, to appreciate them. Always take heed of that vanchakalpa that we always do. Now the reason for that is obviously that the more we ask with humility and the more we appreciate our acharyas, the more we will learn, the more we will advance spiritually. It is actually in our benefit. But the other wonderful part, which Srila Prabhupada mentioned when we are trying to learn about, this is just continuing from what this text in the Srimad Bhagavatam is telling us, that we need to follow Lord Brahma. Now, Srila Prabhupada has got another hint, a very good tip for us, that he has mentioned in one of his classes, which I forget which one, because there's many classes, Srila Prabhupada. That good tip there was the art of listening. The art of listening. Srila Prabhupada said he is able to execute the orders of his spiritual master, Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur, Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur, because he heard him. He listened. There were many godbrothers of Srila Prabhupada, they were given the same instructions. They didn't hear. They might have heard the sounds, but they didn't really listen. So the art of listening is a very crucial part of spiritual advancement. We hear the sounds of the Mahamantra, that's one thing, but listening to instructions, listening is and this is a tip that comes from Srila Prabhupada himself. So if you really want to become spiritually advanced, learn the art of listening, to the point that you can execute the instructions given to you by the spiritual master or somebody who is in higher authority. It helps. Other than reading our Srimad Bhagavatam, our Vedic scriptures, our Shastras. Let me see if there's anything else that any other pearls of wisdom in this regard. That will be of use. I mean, if you want to know, there is an example of listening. The perfect example is Narad Muni. I mean, when he was a little boy, he listened very carefully to those rishis and sages that had been there that his mother was serving. And the rishis told him that the Vedas, they are your mother, like your mother. And the spiritual master, they are your fathers. So he had heard very carefully. And so at the time when his mother died, he was just a 5-year-old boy. And he was left all alone in this world. And basically what he did, he didn't fall apart. I mean, a 5-year-old child losing everything, I mean, what's going to happen to a 5-year-old child? It's just, but because he had the instructions and he had heard very carefully, he was able to go in search of the Lord at a very tender age of 5 years. He took it to heart that, those sages were like his father. And whatever was in the Shastra, the Vedas, there is a mother. And he took it to heart and he looked for Krishna at the age of 5. It's because he listened. And the advantage with the 5-year-old and children, they're very innocent. They believe, what the elders tell them. We are a little bit older, so it's harder to, we become wiser in a sense that we question everything that people tell us. We try to reason whether it's right or wrong, which is not a bad thing to do. However, it does hinder or maybe makes it a bit, the process of listening, it makes it a little bit harder, that much harder. Because the innocence of the child's heart, mother tells you that this is it, and they believe. So the art of listening. That will all help us. These are techniques that helps us in our spiritual advancement, but also to accept that Krishna is the Lord and harbor that non-envious quality. So I will stop there. We've reached our time. Does anybody have any comments or any questions? Okay. So Granth-raj Srimad Bhagavatam Puran ki Jai.